that'll help us make sure that we're hearing everybody in the room real clearly. First thing I'd like to do is have us go around the table. Well, let me go ahead and say what we're doing here. We're call to order the joint workshop for the Transportation Commission, CTIO, and CTE to get an update on the Front Range Passenger Rail District. And what I think I'd like to do, since we have so many faces in here, some of which are new to some of the folks, why don't we go around the table and identify who we all are, and then we'll go ahead and kick off the workshop. My name is Terry Hart. I'm from Pueblo. I am the Transportation Commissioner from District 10, which is the southern and eastern 10 counties of the state. And I'm currently serving as the chair of the Transportation Commission. I'll go ahead and turn the mic over to my vice chair, Eula Adams.
I'm Eula Adams. I'm a CTIO board member, also a commissioner for CDOT, serving as District 3, which is Arapahoe and Douglas County.
Todd Masters, Commissioner for District 11.
Justin Curry, attorney at the Colorado Attorney General's Office, Transportation Unit.
Cecil Gutierrez, Transportation Commissioner for Region 5, which is Larimer, Weld, and Morgan counties, and also Vice Chair of the CTIO Board.
Diane Barrett. I'm Special Advisor to the Governor for Joint Service.
I'm Karen Stewart. I'm the chair of CTIO, and I'm also Transportation Commissioner for District 4, which is Adams County, Broomfield County, and Boulder County.
Hi, I'm Hannah Parsons, Transportation Commissioner for District 9, which is El Paso, Fremont Park, and Teller counties.
Great. Good afternoon. I'm Kathleen Brackey, and I'm a member of the CTE board.
Hi there, I'm Shelley Cook. I'm a Transportation Commissioner from District 2, which is Jeffco and a little bit of Broomfield, and then also a member of the CTIO board.
I'm Sally Chafee. I am the Chief of Staff at CDOT, currently serving as Acting Director while Director Liu is on leave, and a member of the CTE board.
Good afternoon. I'm Chris Jones. I'm from Boulder. I'm serving on the CTE board, currently as chair.
Hi, everyone. Matt Fromer with the Clean Transit Enterprise Board.
Dawn Block. I'm from La Junta, Colorado, and currently serve on the CTE board.
Craig Seacrest, CTE Director.
Chris Seabright, Interim General Manager, Front Range Passenger Rail District.
I'm Joshua Lapley. I'm on the Front Range Passenger Rail Board and the Planning Committee Chair.
Thank you. I'm Chris Nevitt. I serve on the board of the Front Range Passenger Rail District as a representative of Dr. Cog, and I also serve as the chair of the FRPR board.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Carla Martin. I'm with the Colorado Attorney General's Office, also in the Transportation Unit, and I serve as CTIO's General Counsel.
Hi, everyone. My name is Piper Darlington. I'm the Director of the Colorado Transportation Investment Office.
Good afternoon. My name is Gina Sacripanti, and I'm with the CTIO board representing the Pikes Peak region.
Herman Stockinger, CDOT Deputy Director and Secretary to our Transportation Commission.
Rick Ritter, CDOT Commissioner for District 6, which is Gilpin, Clear Creek, Grand, Jackson, Routt, Moffett, and Rio Blanco counties.
All right, thank you. Why don't we go to the folks who are joining us online today? First, I see Commissioner Bowman. Commissioner Bowman, if you could say hello.
Hi, I'm Commissioner Bowman. Hi, everybody. I am the CDOT Commissioner for District 7, which is Chaffee, Delta, Eagle, Garfield, Gunnison, Lake, Mesa, Montrose, Ouray, Pitkin, and Summit counties. So thank you. Glad to join you today.
Thank you. And we also have Commissioner Holguin. Commissioner Holguin.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Jessica Holguin, Transportation Commissioner, District 1, which is Denver.
All right, thank you. And I see one other person, I'm not making out the name, David?
Hi, my name is David Averill. I'm on the CTE board, currently the vice chair.
All right, thank you, David. And have I missed anyone who's online? Oh, now I see, is it, I'm sorry, I'm looking across the room. Is that Nellie?
Yes. Hello, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nellie Moran, and I am on the board of directors for the CTIO. I represent the Denver area.
Thank you, Nellie. Appreciate it. Anybody else that I might have missed? All right, thank you. And I'll ask for everybody's forgiveness. I just got a brand new iPad, and I have no clue how to use it. And so, and I'm not 16, so it takes me a little while to figure it out. So I'm working back and forth with wonderful staff here to make sure that I've got everything going. So that's why I'm hopping up and down. So, all right, that gets us into the body of the agenda. And I have I listed first Chris Nevitt. I don't know if Chris is going first or who's going first for the presentation here.
I think it's me, Dr.
Okay.
Hart. Commissioner Hart.
Go ahead.
And just to clarify, your practice is that we sit at the table, we don't go to a podium? Okay, perfect. I don't really need to yell that much. Well, thank you all so much for having us today. My name is Chrissy Bright, and I'm the interim general manager of the Front Range Passenger Rail District. I'm joined today by our board chair, Chris Nevitt, as well as someone who I think is a very familiar face in this building, Josh Lapley, who is our planning committee chair. And so anyways, thank you again so much for having us. Recognizing that there might be some new TC members since we were last here in November 2023, I'm starting our presentation with a bit of foundation about the Front Range Passenger Rail District and the project itself as kind of an entry point to more conversations. So thank you again for having us. Next slide. Oh, there we go. This is dizzying. All right, so what is the Front Range Passenger Rail District? We are a special district created through the legislature through Senate Bill 21238. If you look to the right, our district boundary is that bluish background, and the call-out boxes are the primary station markets for proposed intercity passenger rail service. We have a 24-person board of directors, and CDOT is one of those seats on our board. We are lucky to have Herman Stockinger serving in the CDOT seat right now. Our district was created with the statutory direction to plan, design, finance, construct, and operate an interconnected north-south passenger rail system along the Front Range. Following voter approval, we have the ability to levy taxes to fund the rail system. And we are working with local communities to support station development, and we have the authority to set up station area improvement districts. Next slide, please. All right. So at its core, Front Range Passenger Rail is about providing a new, safe, convenient, and reliable travel option for residents and travelers along the Front Range. But the why and the benefits are much greater than just that. Connectivity is a huge part of the story. People across the Front Range need reliable ways to reach economic centers, medical appointments, higher education, and other key destinations. By providing efficient and affordable transportation options, Front Range Passenger Rail can improve accessibility to employment opportunities for employees and other local businesses, so we have new additional workforce opportunities. Building on our economic theme, with job creation, building and maintaining rail infrastructure and stations provides jobs for engineers, construction workers, and technicians. Once trains are running, FRPR can employ operators and maintenance staff. Passenger rail stations themselves often serve as hubs for economic activity, attracting businesses, restaurants, and retail establishments to station areas, adding jobs in these services. And then, of course, what all of this amounts to is more support for local businesses and additional tax revenue generation. To the last point of sustainability and safety, passenger rail offers a way to reduce highway congestion and reducing traffic crashes and fatalities on our roadways. It helps us to support our air quality goals and mitigating single vehicular occupancy vehicle pollution and ultimately reducing our road maintenance costs. Next slide. Thank you. All right. So what is this thing we're talking about? Some of the key kind of characteristics of service is looking to use existing freight tracks. By doing that, we can minimize costs and expedite the service start date. We have identified 9 primary markets between Fort Collins and Pueblo. And as I mentioned earlier, that previous map showed those 9 primary markets. Statutorily, we have a long-term vision of connecting to New Mexico and Wyoming. As you will hear about more today through the workshop, we are part of an enterprise and a goal to initiate service by 2029 between Denver and Fort Collins, with a goal of having full corridor service Fort Collins through Pueblo by 2035. Intercity passenger rail service is not what we have in Colorado right now. It's a distinct service from the RTD commuter rail lines. And just for an example, one of the things to know is that 79 miles per hour is the maximum operating speed. So just kind of, this is a new train version for Colorado. And then travel time estimate, just, kind of a golden run opportunity would be about just over 3 hours, 3.5 hours from Fort Collins to Pueblo, which is currently travel time competitive with an automobile. All right, next slide. All right, so I just want to celebrate something, and I'm really glad that Lisa Kaufman's here today, since this was largely very much her brainchild and her baby. But through a coordinated effort of the governor's office, of Amtrak, of BNSF Railway, about this time last year, there was a one-time special train ride put in place that operated from Denver Union Station to downtown Longmont. It was a really special demonstration train where kind of along the entire tracks, you had members of the public sort of waving at the train and cheering it on. What I understand to be true is that passenger rail service was last continuously operated on these lines in the 1960s. So it was a really powerful opportunity to bring rail service back to the Front Range. Kind of as an anecdotal note, my coworker Ashika actually drove from Denver Union Station to Longmont to meet the train in Longmont. And even though the train was operating at lower speeds on this corridor because it's yet to be improved for passenger rail service, the train still beat Ashika. And I think what that shows is that there's this real travel time competitiveness of passenger rail service, and that as our state continues to grow, as the tracks are operated, that competitiveness becomes even more real. All right, next slide, please. Awesome. So we are fortunate to be working hand in hand with CDOT doing our technical planning for this service. We are engaged in a service development plan for the corridor, so kind of a Fort Collins to Pueblo analysis, which really is a feasibility study that demonstrates to the Federal Railroad Administration, as well as stakeholders across our state, that this is a viable service that's worth investing in. This is a comprehensive pre-NEPA planning document that really charts the route, station markets, service frequency, and kind of phasing implementation plan for the project. You'll hear about this later on in my presentation, but we are right now in the midst of a public engagement opportunity where we are showing some of our technical work to date and kind of getting public comments on that work. All right, next slide. Who doesn't love a timeline? Just wanted to share, this is kind of just showing where we're at in our progress. A lot of work has been done to date, and we are on track to finish this planning effort at the end of this year, if not sooner. All right, next slide. All right, people always want to know about ridership, and I think ridership is one of those really fun topics. Just wanted to show some things about kind of who is this service, what are people doing and how do they want to use it? What's interesting about it is that you can see that actually there are very few people that are looking to travel full corridor from kind of northern through southern section. But what you do have is you have a lot of people that are trying to flow from kind of northern down to Denver and back forth, and of course, southern section to Denver and back. And you also have travel kind of patterns within the northern section itself and the southern section itself. And just to provide a little bit of context, northern kind of means Boulder to Fort Collins. Southern means kind of Douglas County down through Pueblo. And just wanted to show this because it really does show that people are trying to get across the Front Range, and yet also there is different travel patterns amidst that corridor, so that ultimately service will likely reflect kind of where you have greater areas of demand. All right, next slide. Again, just really wanted to repeat that this is a service that is intended to be travel competitive with automobiles. That's part of our district statute, and that's also part of what our current planning analysis is showing. So it is competitive with cars now, and it'll be wildly competitive with cars 20 years from now. Next slide, please. All right, this is a lot of numbers on a piece of paper, but essentially we have just completed, or CDOT has just completed, an alternatives analysis, which again is kind of a component of the service development plan. And it's kind of a first brush stroke of where do we generally want to be with our service frequency and our maximum operating speeds? What is kind of the juice worth the squeeze? And it looks like an element of this slide fell off the graphic, but what CDOT has kind of recommended as this alternative is number 3. And that would be kind of a full build, so year 2045, 10 round trips throughout most of the corridor. Looking to improve the track to a maximum operating speed of 79 miles per hour. A bit nerdy and technical, but given kind of geography and curvature, you can improve this corridor to be higher speeds, but given kind of limitations with grade and with curvature, you can't actually reach those speeds. So just showing that we've done some technical work and that kind of that 10 round trips is where we're looking at. And for those that want more nerdy details, we can offer that during Q&A. Next slide, please. All right, so as mentioned, there is an online on-demand open house open right now. It is open through June 15th, and just an opportunity for the public to get a sense of what we've been up to and to really help them understand some of our analysis and really just kind of show some of the good work that's been done by the CDOT team. So that is available for anyone to visit at their leisure and provide comments on. All right, what's next slide? All right, and then just kind of to tee up what the next part of your workshop is today. Talking about the SDP is a lot of talking about the full build, the big vision, that really thoughtful kind of deep planning with the railroads to ensure that we are building a robust system for time to come. We also recognize that there are nearer term opportunities to initiate service faster and to really kind of demonstrate to the public the rail service and kind of just, making things happen, so to speak. We also recognize that it's critical to link sort of the Front Range passenger rail intercity conversation with previous fast tracks conversations and really just showing that there is progress to voters before asking for more voter support to initiate further train service. And so working through the Senate Bill 24-184 directive, we have been coordinating actively with our many logo friends on the far right side of that slide. So with CDOT, RTD, CTIO, the governor's office, and CTE to look at what can be done to leverage existing resources to put initial train service on the tracks that can then be used as kind of a stepping stone to build support for future passenger rail service. So just wanted to kind of tee up that we are kind of how the big picture and the near term are working together. And again, you will learn a lot more about that through your workshop today. And I think that's my last slide. Let's see. Looks like it is. Okay. Happy to take any questions. And thank you all again for having us.
All right, any questions? Commissioner Ritter.
I have 2 specific questions.
Okay.
To what extent are you guys integrating your travel sort of schedule, plan, et cetera, with RTD to provide spurs to the stations? In particular, I noticed that there is no station in Adams County. What factors are you bringing to bear in order to increase availability for those that might not be directly close to the stations?
Yeah, so that's one of those questions where there's kind of the short-term and the long-term answer. So prior to the current planning work, there was a study done, more of a initial visioning study completed by the Front Range Passenger Rail Commission in 2020. And that was really looking at where are those primary markets and where should those station markets be to your exact point to kind of connect to population centers and transit connectivity. So really in looking at Littleton as a station and contemplating Mineral, for example, the real point there is to see where is that inherent transit connectivity. So that is a huge part of kind of how we got to these markets to date. Ongoing coordination with the local transit providers, Mountain Metro, RTD, others, Transport is a huge part of this. And I think the sense is we are biting our way to there, but we're not at a place now where we're rerouting buses, so to speak. But that is absolutely part of the intention of this service.
Okay. Let me then.
It's not even.
In terms of affordable housing, how is that integrated into your planning, if at all?
Josh, you're making funny faces. Do you want to answer that one? Or I can if you want, just so you're making noises.
I think it's a great point and a great question. I can say, unless somebody wants to correct me, I don't think we proactively looked at how can we provide more affordable housing through this. I think it certainly does that with the markets that we're tying together. But it hasn't been proactive at this point to determine where all those stations were going to be.
Okay. I mean, having spent a fair amount of time on this issue on Northwest Passenger Rail, I strongly urge you to look at stations that would allow for, shall we say, less motorized traffic to the stations in order to enhance the utility of the rail system.
All right. Anyone else with a question? Vice Chair Adams.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I'm just curious about the process here for obtaining approvals and funding. So can you tell me what approvals in the near term? Because I realize a project like this, there are lots of steps along the way. So it's not going to get some grandiose, okay, go and do it kind of thing. So in the next year, 2 years, what's locked in place that won't be undone from a funding standpoint? And what additional things do you guys have to get approved in order to keep this on whatever your target timeline is? What kind of approvals do you need to get, and what kind of funding does that imply?
Okay, I think you asked a pretty specific question, but I'm going to answer a bigger question because you kept using the word approvals, which is a really key word to make sure you make progress.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm going to answer your question in a very grandiose way because it's a really important one. There are different approvals needed to make progress. I think first and foremost, we are really excited to complete this service development plan with the FRA this year. And that'll really show that kind of first pass of you've done your due diligence work to be part of this federal planning process and continue to be more and more preferential for federal funding. An additional part of this is then we go to the environmental clearance process, NEPA. And as you know, that is an approval written process. And that'll be a huge piece in terms of, again, getting kind of the stakeholder, host railroad, and kind of federal buy-in for the project. And again, host railroad is a huge part of kind of buy-in. You know, we are looking to interoperate on their lines, and we are extremely fortunate in that the SDP work has a lot of deep analysis modeling with the freight railroads. So they are actively part of this effort in terms of defining what service is feasible and what kind of improvements are needed to get there. But it'll be agreements with them that make this happen. And so it is both kind of federal agreements, it is host railroad agreements that ensure the progress continues to advance, the program does. In terms of funding, I think that like any good sort of steward, you look to maximize a portfolio of diverse options. And so we are looking at, you know, I think as we presented more on today, there were some recent state fee revenues passed. And so how could those be used to leverage the service? How can any possible federal support be leveraged, which we recognize as a unique day right now. And then ultimately, we have a sense that in order to realize this full build project, we will need to go to the voters for a taxing ask.
So do you have a number?
For how much
Yeah, I'm just trying to get a feel for, are we talking 50 million, 100 million over the next couple of years? I'm just trying to understand the magnitude of, you know, and again, I'm not trying to get the 10-year version of this. I'm just trying to get the 2-year version.
Absolutely. So are you, let me give you a long answer, but yes. So when we were kind of doing some initial financial modeling on what it would take to operate passenger rail service between Fort Collins and Pueblo in 2024 dollars, and that was looking at about 6 round trips, we got a number of about 3.2 billion. I think what we're looking at right now is, again, really excited about how these initial kind of Senate Bill 184 opportunities to start a kind of that initial phase, that pilot phase, can help buy down that total cost so that when voters are asked to come to the table, it's ideally for either a number smaller than that 3.2, 3.4, or you know, if we add more frequency, then it would be obviously recalibrated. But you know, we're looking in the 3 Bs in 2024 dollars. I know it's not the 100 million you first said. Yeah. Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? All right, what's the next step on the presentation here?
I think that's a Herman question, right?
Yeah, if there's no more questions and no more questions online, then I think we can move to the more specific joint service conversation that was scheduled for 1:30, but if we're ahead of schedule, that's great.
Just go ahead and go into it. Okay. All right, thanks. So why don't we go ahead and do that then? We'll go ahead and shift on the agenda over to the joint workshop between, whoops.
May I ask a provocative question, perhaps?
Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Hogan, go ahead.
Thank you. I guess I'm curious. I'm really excited about passenger rail, and I think this is such a big opportunity for Colorado. And this might be just speculative right now, but to what extent do you all think that the uncertainty with federal funding is going to impact the current timeline or the progress that can be made given all of the unknowns?
It's absolutely the critical question, and I appreciate you asking that. I think that there's sort of a couple ways of looking at it. Oh, you're pulling that closer to you. Does that mean you want to talk? Do you want to go first? Okay. Josh can back clean up. I think part of the desire to look at sort of this near-term starter phase is to recognize that Colorado wants to demonstrate movement and progress while we're in a bit of a more uncertain federal situation. I would also note that when the legislature created the Front Range Passenger Rail District in 2021, it created us with the power to sort of raise the support that we need to realize this project. And so it will come down to what do we need to do in the near-term current context to support it, and then recognizing that ideally there are new periods in federal government and more support is likely down the line. So I think that we have to just stay in touch with our federal partners. We have to monitor how things evolve, and we have to be dexterous to kind of context. But you know, this is a very large vision and a big program, and so I think the point is that we work in our current context, and then as things evolve, we leverage those opportunities.
Yeah, I would just add any major project,
Please speak into your mic if you could.
sorry, any project that's in the hundreds of millions or billions should contemplate and should have some component of federal funding, I think. And I would also say that to get there, to get the federal funding, you have to be prepared and you have to be ready, right? Every time funding comes available, it's all about, are you shovel ready? Are you shovel ready? Everybody wants to spend it right away. We're not shovel ready today. We're getting close, and joint service plan is certainly a component of being shovel ready, but we're not shovel ready on the whole corridor. And that's what we have to get through the SDP, and then we have to get through NEPA. And once we get through those things, and if we have state funding that's got a joint service plan that's going in action, that's shovel ready. And I think by the time we're shovel ready, there's likely a different view of the world and a different administration. And that's how you win money for big projects. So from an optimistic point of view, I think we're at a good place in time right now.
Commissioner Cook?
Another thing to think about is the interactivity between this corridor and Mountain Rail. I mean, I could see with that getting underway to Granby in 2029 or 2026, then you'd have a sense of excitement that starts to build about statewide rail, and that would feed into sentiment about Front Range Passenger Rail and may help with the corridor's prospects in federal funding seeks. So just that idea to add to the mix here.
Good comment. Any other questions or comments? And I'm looking online and I don't see any online either. So, okay, I think that we're ready to go on to the next step of the agenda then. Next item on the agenda is a joint workshop with TC, CTIO, CTE, workshop on the draft joint service agreement. And I have two people listed here, Diane Barrett and Lisa Kaufman.
Thank you all. I'm going to kick off the presentation and try to address some of the questions asked too in kind of the overview before handing it over to my esteemed colleague, one and only Diane Barrett, to go over where we are on joint service. And the point of the workshop is to discuss the IGA that you all will be contemplating as board members for adoption sometime this summer. And so I'll try to give a brief overview of where we are with joint service to date and in general, the governor's rail agenda that I help oversee. So Lisa Kaufman, Senior Strategic Advisor to the Governor. Part of my portfolio of projects includes the Governor's agenda around expanding passenger rail. And so that includes both the Mountain Rail project that we had a big milestone on over the last couple weeks by securing a new 25-year access agreement with Union Pacific, which we are very proud of because access agreements, I think the fastest they usually get done is 2 to 3 years, and we were able to secure one in 4 months. And we are working really hard to align all of the state systems in a way that allows us to commence service by November 1st, 2026. And in fact, that date is in the access agreement with Union Pacific, and they are also aligning their team on construction and approvals to get us to the November 1st, 2026 date, which is a very aggressive timeline, as they tell me every day how aggressive that is. So I think Commissioner Cook really touched upon this, is that I think what we have in Colorado is a population who very much supports transit and rail, and would like to see a expansion of transit and rail, but they really need to see to believe. I think that we have a history of overpromising and not delivering rail projects in Colorado that looms large on all of these conversations. And so we suffer a confidence crisis with the voters on can they invest in new transit and rail projects and know that they're going to be delivered. And so what the governor's theory of change is on this is that we need to deliver service with existing resources and with state resources prior to going back to the voters and asking for a new tax increase when some of those voters are skeptical that government can deliver these services. And so we've really focused on speed to market and how we can bring new passenger rail online and show to the people of Colorado that we can, in fact, deliver these kind of big public infrastructure projects with existing resources in an ROI that makes sense for the state of Colorado. And so that's what we're delivering with Mountain Rail, with being able to create this new public-private partnership with Union Pacific that utilizes a state important asset like Moffett Tunnel in order to deliver passenger rail for Coloradans with little to new investment. And my good friend from 9 News reminds the folks in Colorado with their segment on the train to Boulder that hasn't run yet, that we still are paying for a train that hasn't run yet. So that has really led to what can we do to fulfill the commitment to the voters of Colorado for Northwest Rail. And it, through conversations with RTD and Front Range Passenger Rail, what came to fruition was this concept around joint service, which is really a collaboration to use existing resources to have one access agreement with BNSF and one operator to deliver service. This is important because people feel like they're paying for this train and they still haven't gotten it, and it's going to hurt our ability to fund new passenger rail. But it's also important from a technical and cost perspective because having multiple passenger rail systems on the same freight line adds a huge level of complexity for the Class 1 railroad, this case BNSF, and would add huge cost for both RTD and Front Range Passenger Rail if two public entities were to plan their projects in a silo and go it alone. The cost would balloon for both of those projects. And so what we have attempted to do is to pull together the public entities under one umbrella for joint service to design the project together, which would be a hybrid between commuter rail and intercity passenger rail, service the communities that were promised Northwest Rail, but maintain that intercity classification from a federal perspective to ensure that the project reaps those benefits, because there's not just the grant funding that benefits intercity passenger rail, but there is some supremacy rights that benefit intercity passenger rail that's very different than commuter rail. So under this umbrella, we've pulled together all the public entities and have tried to come up with a design where we can achieve everyone's goals, some trade-offs, but get a much smaller price point for the public by moving together and create efficiencies in all systems by moving together. So we've been in this process for the better part of a year. We recruited Diane out of retirement last August to come lead this effort. And where we are in the process is an initial cost estimate, but also needing to get to this IGA so that we can get to a negotiating table to negotiate directly with BNSF as one entity. BNSF is very supportive of us coming to the table as one entity to negotiate an access agreement. And in our private conversations with them, they believe that there is more cost savings to be had once we get into real negotiations with them than even what we've priced out through our study. So what we are looking for is adoption of the IGA by all boards by July, commencing access agreement negotiations with BNSF, and then going back to all the originating boards sometime next winter for an actual appropriation based off of the actual plan. And the goal is for train service to start running by 2029. Again, providing the ability to have the voters of Colorado see to believe that this is possible and that it's a worthy endeavor to continue to invest in. And so what we want to present today is the particulars of what is in the IGA, and then I'll review the timeline again for everyone and here to answer any questions. And, want to also just acknowledge our valuable TC member, Karen Stewart, and this might be her last meeting in person. Hopefully not. I wish she could stay on forever, but after serving 2 terms on the Transportation Commission, she's probably ready to enjoy some more leisure time. But we would not be anywhere on these projects without Karen and her steadfast support of us. Even though when she didn't believe me when I told her the plan 2 years ago, she still gave me the tools to be successful. So I just want to thank Karen also while I have the opportunity. And I'm going to turn it over to Diane.
We will miss you, Karen. You know that. As you know, the statute gave us an option to do 3 different things. We could create a rail authority. We could create a new corporate nonprofit entity the way Denver Union Station did with the Denver Union Station Project Authority, or we could do an IGA. And after much discussion last fall, everybody decided, really together, that we would do an IGA. Cheaper, certainly, less time, and everybody knows what an IGA is and has been in them, and nobody's kind of skittish about it. So we decided to do it that way. It allows the collaboration that the statute clearly expects. It creates an oversight committee, just as you would do if you had created a new entity. In this case, it's 6 people, and it's the governor or the governor's designee, the executive director of CDOT or designee, CTE executive director, CTIO executive director, RTD general manager and CEO, and Front Range Passenger Rail District interim general manager. So you know everybody, and they all know each other. And since last fall, every meeting that we've had has been in person, I believe. Now, why do I say that? Because the reason I'm on board is because I've done things with a lot of different agencies coming together to make projects. And what you do is you create relationships. And if you don't create the relationships, the whole project becomes much more difficult. So that's where we are. We're all working together. We decided that we were not going to let the attorneys sort of, sandblast us at the last moment. So we brought them in really early, and Carla and Justin have been on the team. And everybody's attorneys have been meeting together. And in fact, they haven't even let us join them. I said, well, shouldn't I be there? And Russell said, no, if you were there, everybody else would want to be there. So the attorneys have really had their own way with the IGA, and it's really a nice document. Lisa doesn't like it very much because it's a document that tells her what to do. So we're in the midst of this, and there will be continuing changes, as you can imagine, because everybody is reading it very carefully and looking at it, both in their own sort of isolated way and also in the best interest of the group. Again, Lisa points out.
Should be changing the slides for a minute.
Yeah.
Next one.
Sorry. Thanks. Well,
Which slide are you looking
This
for?
one.
yeah, the overview of the IGA. Yeah.
Yep,
Okay.
that's the right one.
As Lisa points out, the important thing that we're trying to achieve here at this moment is to make sure that BNSF will understand that they are only going to have one entity to deal with. I can't say that enough because it's so important to them that they not have more than one entity that's actually using their tracks, that they have to worry about schedules, they have to worry about maintenance, they have to worry about all these things. If they had more than someone joining together to do passenger rail, they simply wouldn't do it. And they're not willing to tell us how much things really cost until we can prove to them that we are an entity, that we can act together, and that we will act together. So that's why it's so important for us to get acquiescence and agreement about the IGA and about the commitment of intent to appropriate funds for joint service passenger rail. The things to remember about the IGA, one is it makes no difference in the powers or authorities of any existing agencies. So RTD, FRPRD, all have the same authority and power as they do today. And again, it's important to remember that each of those entities has a board of directors that will be required to approve anything that the body does. And the IGA makes it a prior approval, which is actually very important and was a matter of discussion. Individual bodies will continue to vote. So nobody's abilities to act on their own, RTD, FRPRD, is impacted at all. And the body at the moment is considering, and I think will probably end up operating, at least before we have a finance plan, by a majority plus one vote, which means that 4 people will prevail on any vote. And when we do have a financial plan, which is after we've had negotiations with BNSF and we've come to conclusions about what the access agreement is going to look like and what the costs are. When we come to that point and we are able to adopt the finance plan, after that, majority will rule on every decision that the JSEOC makes, unless one of the members wants to have a weighted vote. And there's provision in the IGA for weighted voting, which changes a lot. So, and will continue to change, I'm sure, as people talk more about it. But in any event, the idea of a weighted vote is likely to end up in the IGA. And we'll change one more time, Carmen.
Next slide. So this is just to recap what the process and timeline that we expect to endeavor to stand up joint service. So we are currently here doing the workshop on the IGA and here to answer any questions about the IGA. We anticipate that each originating board would be taking up the IGA in June or July to adopt the IGA. at which point we would then seek to commence negotiations with BNSF for one access agreement, one operator for joint service. And then upon completion of an access agreement, we would then be able to price out the actual infrastructure needed for the actual service that we negotiated with BNSF. So again, having just led this process with Union Pacific for Mountain Rail, the way it worked is we agreed to the maximum daily round trips and what was the economics around those daily round trips, how would they be paid for, how would O&M be accounted for, and then also what is the project list needed in order to have those daily round trips. We would anticipate a similar result out of negotiations with BNSF, which would then lead to a finance plan based off of actual cost and timelines for when service would start. So it would be after that process, would we be going to the originating boards to ask for a formal appropriation based off of the finance plan? And then we would go out to procure operator and rolling stock after the adoption of that finance plan. And we would start the NEPA, the construction, and have the goal of commencing service by January of 2029 for joint service.
I forgot one very important thing. The agreements that we're asking for right now are fully contingent. If there's not the ability to negotiate with BNSF to get to satisfactory conclusions, all bets are off. Nobody has to do anything. So again, fully contingent on a successful negotiation with BNSF.
Happy to take any questions. Yes,
Commissioner Ritter.
Commissioner Ritter.
When you speak of a weighted vote, what are the weights based on? Population, financial considerations, education levels? I don't know.
Contributions. And that's defined in IGA, and it, again, is a definition that's under discussion. Again, the organizations.
Okay. Other questions, comments? Commissioner Gutierrez.
Thank you. I have one question on the negotiations with BNSF. Will all of the upgrades, rail upgrades, be fully paid for by this organization, or will BNSF contribute to those upgrades?
Well, the upgrades are based off of upgrades that are only needed because of passenger rail. And so the upgrades would be financed by the contributing parties to the joint powers. And I will say, again, since I took over this position in 2 years, I now have a standing biweekly meeting with BNSF. They are very collaborative. They're very solution-oriented. They want to work with us to make this possible. But of course, they also are a business that they are running, and they want to do it in a way that's mutually beneficial, which is what has kind of birthed this idea around joint service, to be able to provide passenger rail on this existing freight line, but in a way that is compatible with their freight business. And so I would expect, and one of the things I wanted to mention in my opening remarks was the alternative analysis that Chrissy talked about for Front Range Passenger Rail is a really important document, because what you see in that when you look at benchmarks of systems around the country is that almost all intercity passenger rail systems start at 2 or 3 daily round trips, and then they grow from there, and they tend to top out at 10 to 12 daily round trips. But that's after decades of being in service. And so one of the frequent questions we get for joint service is, why are you only looking at 2 or 3 daily round trips? And the answer is because that is where all intercity passenger rail services start, and build from there to build up the ridership, to build up the frequency, but also to work through any of the complexities of sharing a line with the freight railroad. And so the conversations have been certainly very open and honest about starting there and being able to build from there with the Class 1 railroads, as it was also the case with Union Pacific for Mountain Rail.
All right, thank you. Other questions, comments? Commissioner Cook?
I don't mean to. So wasn't there something in legislation that provided for a quarterly meeting between CDOT and RTD? I wasn't clear if it was the boards. Emily, does that ring a bell? Yeah. Just you stressed the idea of relationships. I really think that's critical, and so appreciate what you're doing. But that, I'm hoping that's an opportunity too to forge a similar relationship with the RTD folks, and so help to move things forward in that way as well.
Yeah, I would say that RTD has been a full participant in joint service and greatly collaborative on this. In fact, I think that we greatly benefit from General Manager Deborah Johnson coming from California. She has a lot of experience on how Joint Powers works in California. Joint Powers is a well kind of oiled business model for delivering passenger rail in California. They have a law statewide that organizes it. We don't have a similar Joint Powers law in Colorado, but we have looked at how that has operated in California, learned from it, and some of those provisions that you see in the IGA is learning the lessons of how this has operated for decades in California. But I will say, RTD's been a big collaborator on this and originator of some of the expertise.
I would just add that we have Operations Committee and Finance Committee and a Governance Committee that meet regularly. So it's lots of staff, and those groups also have developed really good working relationships. It's really fun to attend one of the operations committees where all the engineers are talking. It doesn't make much sense to me, but it's really interesting to see everybody working hard together.
Okay, online we've got Commissioner Hoagie.
Thank you, Chair. This might be a very early question, but I'm wondering how the financial contribution of each partner will be determined or established in the process.
Yeah, so for each revenue source comes with kind of its own governance. So obviously, the oil and gas fee is to provide air quality benefits, the daily rental car fee to help reduce congestion on the public highways, and the RTD sales tax is authorized within the RTD district for Northwest Rail in that system. So we will be creating a finance plan that lives within the legal confines of all of the revenue sources to come together with a comprehensive approach to financing the project. Again, once we have true cost estimates from negotiations with BNSF and an infrastructure list. We've done this initial study, and the report that we submitted on March 1st to the legislature kind of goes through the threshold question of, is there enough existing resources within the constraints of every revenue source to be able to accomplish joint service? And the conclusion we came to in that March 1st report to the legislature was yes. The actual finance plan will be based off of actual projects. So for one, example, I think anyone who has ever heard me talk about this project has heard me talk about uniquely this segment of freight railroad has no positive train control on it. And that is probably the single biggest infrastructure cost to this project, is that it is dark territory from a signaling perspective. I live in Boulder County. I don't sleep well at night knowing that there is a lot of hazards and petrochemicals being transported on this line without a modern signaling system to indicate if there is any blockages on the tracks, which is, how derailments happen. And so one of the things that this project will definitely have to finance is PTC for the whole line. And so when you see some of the cost estimates and people are like, why is this so expensive? It's because of one of the reasons is because of that unique feature that this does not have a modern signaling system, even for freight operations, and you have to have it for passenger operations. So we will know that in the finance plan, how are we going to finance PTC will be one of the main drivers of the finance plan.
And I would just add that in-kind contributions will be counted as contributions, and consequently, that will be really important because much of what might happen is able to be taken as an obligation of one of the parties, and then that becomes accredited to them in their weighted votes.
Okay, Vice Chair Adams.
Lisa, your comment that you just made about positive PTC, why wouldn't that be something that we would legislate in the state of Colorado? I don't understand why that wouldn't be something, even if we didn't do front range, why wouldn't we just simply say anybody traveling on roads with freight that could be carrying things that are hazardous, why wouldn't we have that? I mean, I don't understand. Could you just speak to that for a second?
Sure. So it's federally preempted. So in any area that it is expressly regulated by the federal government, the state is preempted. And this is an area that is expressly regulated by the federal government. And there are triggers for which you do have to have positive train control. And it's about volume, and it's about the materials being transported by volume. Actually, it's also, if you want to know the gritty details, it's also about airborne volume, not just if it's liquid. So, for freight operations, the trigger for PTC, we don't hit on this line, but it is a prerequisite for any passenger rail system to have positive train control. So, but I will say again, I think the relationship with BNSF is very strong, and they've been partnering with us to expand PTC on the line, which was a big part of the CRISI grant that we got last fall, was to extend positive train control from Westminster to Broomfield for the improvements for freight operations today. And we have been in positive conversations with the FRA over the last couple weeks and got the initial green light that CRISI grant is moving forward with papering to a grant agreement. So that's also good news.
Thank you. Thank you for explaining that.
All right. Other questions, comments? Well, I'll just go ahead and toss in a couple of 2 cents here. First, as a citizen, I think I've said this way too many times, but first time I heard about this project, I was a sophomore in high school. And frankly, I'm getting tired of waiting. And I got to tell you, I applaud you. It was just yesterday. I have to applaud you on the work that you've done. For the first time that I have observed is we have a solid commitment to do what it takes to get this done. And as a citizen who has desperately wanted this for a very long time, I'm extremely proud of where you are. I think that you've done a great job to get us to this point. I know that there's a lot of work still to be done. The complexity that you've described of pulling the group together and then putting together an IGA that's supported by financial contributions from independent governments, I know that's not easy. And it looks to me like you're doing a very good job of pulling all of the respective interests together to go ahead and say, look, at what do you want to accomplish? What are you willing to toss in to get this thing going? Establishing your completion or at least first train service in 2029, I think is fantastic. I'd love to be able to get on it and go home to Pueblo this tomorrow, but I know that that's not going to happen. It'll be a little while. So at any rate, I see the IGA, I guess, as a fairly complex first effort. It's going to evolve, particularly when we get into some kind of more sustainable funding that's going to be required district-wide. I'm assuming that there will also, all along the way, there will be a mixture between that district-wide sustainable funding and local contributions in order to make sure that we're offsetting the benefit to every place that this train system serves. And then the other thing, I just want to go ahead and throw in my 2 cents about the federal funding. We talked about it a little bit before, and I totally agree. Regardless of what we hear in the news almost daily these days, our job as government officials is just do the best we can. do what we have, do what our challenges are. We have a commitment for this. Any of us who have traveled internationally, any of us who have frequented either the East Coast or the West Coast, knows the value of this kind of a system. And frankly, it's about time that we do it here in Colorado. Should there be federal contribution? Yes. We're federal citizens. This is a critical federal project as well as a state project. And so we'll go ahead and navigate that. Over time, we'll make sure that any concerns that are raised are properly answered. And I know that that's exactly what we will be doing. But in the meantime, yeah, we need to push ahead and get shovel ready. And when we are ready to build this baby, I'm hoping that we have the funding not only on a state level, a local level, but also on a federal level. So again, my hat's off to you. I think you've done a great job, and thank you so much for being here. Any other comments or questions this afternoon? If not, I believe that concludes this joint session. And what I'd like to do is go ahead and take a recess for 15 minutes while we can all finish up what we're doing and clear the room so we can get started back into the Transportation Commission workshops. Thank you all so much for being here today. Much appreciated.
At CTIO board, I need to adjourn our CTIO meeting. This was an extension of our meeting. So with this, our CTIO board meeting is adjourned at 1:36. Thank you.
Thank you.
And back to our chairs. We'll again get started here in a bit. Okay, I think we're about ready to get started again. Do we have the recording on? Good enough. All right, we'll go ahead and call the Transportation Commission workshop back to order here. Again, today is May 14th, time's about 2 p.m. And we'll go ahead and go on to the next session of the agenda here. Very next point on the agenda is the BTE Series 2025 Bond Transaction Update and Budget Workshop. Patrick.
There's Patrick. Okay. Thank you, Chair. My name is Patrick Kalenda. I'm the Managing Director for Bridge and Tunnel Enterprise, joined by our Financial Manager, Katie Carlson. Next slide, please. So this month, we're going to be giving you an overview on the recent Bridge and Tunnel Enterprise bond transaction and the corresponding budget actions that need to occur to account for both the new debt service associated with the bonds as well as the bond proceeds. We also have one project budget supplement we will cover as part of today's workshop. Next slide, please. So our bond pricing was ultimately completed on April 22nd. As we discussed last month in our workshop, pricing was originally scheduled on April 8th. We ended up delaying the pricing due to extreme movements in the bond market. So despite this ongoing volatility, we were able to price the bonds. The transaction was successful and well received by the market. So one of the data points we have for you to demonstrate that is that the transaction was about 4.6 times oversubscribed, with 55 investors placing over $1 billion in total orders. So essentially the way we look at that is that when we talk about an oversubscription, that's a comparison in the essentially the value of the transaction and then how many times more orders we get than that. So in this case, we had just over $226 million in proceeds and over $1 billion in orders. So the bonds ultimately have a 30-year term with final maturity on December of 2054. Our closing was scheduled for last Thursday and did go off as planned. Next slide, please. So there's a lot of information shown here. We wanted to provide a final amortization schedule just for informational purposes. There are a couple key statistics I wanted to focus on just to demonstrate how this differs for the schedules you saw during the planning process. So to do this, we want to focus on interest rates and total repayment cost. So with respect to the transaction, ultimately the total all-in true interest cost. So this is kind of all in, considers all the expenses to move forward with the transaction. It ended up being 5.01%. This is a 41 basis point increase from the forecast that we developed on April 3rd. If you look at that in terms of dollars, the total repayment cost for the transaction is just greater than $474 million. This is a $22 million increase from that same forecast. So I do want to mention that as we discussed, the bonds were issued with an optional par call provision. So that does allow us to potentially evaluate refunding the transaction in December of 2034 if there is an opportunity to achieve debt service savings. So certainly we may not realize the full scope of the increase that's shown here. Next slide, please. So this slide provides an overview of sources and uses for the transaction. We've broken the uses into delivery date expenses and our capital construction project fund. So in total, delivery date expenses were just over $1.6 million. This includes our cost of issuance. So that includes municipal advisors, ratings, our bond counsel, our trustee, a number of other entities that are required to be involved in the transaction, as well as our underwriters discount. So they were responsible for marketing and selling the bonds for us and the bond insurance that we discussed. So again, this totals just above $1.6 million, and the remainder is available for our capital construction project fund. The delivery date expenses will ultimately be reflected on the administration and operations line of the BTE budget, and the project fund will be reflected on the capital construction line item. Next slide, please. So this brings us to the budget supplement request that's needed to true up Bridge and Tunnel Enterprises budget and reflect the transaction. So in March, the board approved a resolution to administratively add the $225 million in inflexible revenue to our capital construction budget to reflect our anticipated project fund. So we were planning, looking forward towards this transaction in support of the Floyd Hill project. So we proactively moved forward with adding that budget, making it available to the project. That allowed them to move forward with the project and ultimately authorize it. So the follow-up action for this month is that we need to administratively add the remaining $1,657,250.35 in bond proceeds that were generated by the transaction. This was intentionally sized to match our cost of issuance. And again, this would be added to our administration and operations cost center to pay our delivery date expenses. Next slide, please. So shifting gears to cover one final item in this month's supplement before we move on to the budget amendment. This month, Region 1 is requesting $3,308,866 in Bridge and Tunnel Enterprise Faster Bridge Safety Surcharge to initiate the construction phase for the I-70 East Bridge Repair Project. So this project is a collaboration between Region 1, Bridge and Tunnel Enterprise, and the Fuels Impact Enterprise. It will repair 4 total bridges in Arapahoe County. You can see from the table here, 2 of the bridges included in the package are rated poor, and they're in the top tier of the Bridge and Tunnel Enterprise Bridge Prioritization Plan. With your approval of the supplement you'll be presented with tomorrow, BTE could move forward with funding those 2 structures. Structural work for the 2 Bridge and Tunnel Enterprise structures includes deck repairs, a polyester concrete overlay, and substructure repairs. We're also completing approach work, so there's some concrete slabs that have settled on either side of the bridge that are being repaired as part of this project as well. So this project is reasonably expected to extend the service lives of the structures by an additional 20 to 30 years. This allows us to defer the costly structure replacement project that would inevitably need to occur if we did not maintain the structures. And just based on our general square foot cost estimating methodology, that would total around $21 million. Next slide, please. So moving on to the request to amend Bridge and Tunnel Enterprises fiscal year 2025 budget. So the request associated with the bond transaction is to reallocate budget for our fiscal year 2025 debt service obligations. So our new debt service payments for the recently issued bonds begins on, or the first payment is on June 1st, which falls into fiscal year 2025. Since we did not know the final numbers for the transaction in advance of setting the budget. So if you think about the budget cycle, we were talking about our fiscal year 2025 budget in roughly February, March of 2024. So now that we have this information, we do need to move forward with amending the budget. We're taking budget from our BTE Safety Critical and Asset Management Project line item and moving it to the 2025A Infrastructure Revenue Bond debt service line item. With that said, certainly any reduction to the capital construction program we'd be taking seriously, but in this instance, we certainly have the benefit of the $225 million increase to the project fund and certainly a significant increase to our annual construction program in this fiscal year. Next slide, please. So this slide was included to provide a little bit of additional detail on our fiscal year 2025 debt service obligations. So if you were to compare the first payment that's occurring on June 1st to our request, the two would not exactly line up. This is for a few reasons. So you do see the entirety of our June 1st payment is included in the table. We also needed to make an allowance for bond premium amortization, and then we also need to accrue a portion of the December 1st payment in fiscal year 2025. So that's essentially 1 month or 1/6 of that next payment falls within fiscal year 2025. So each of those items totaled sum up to the total amendment amount that we will be requesting from you tomorrow. Next slide, please. So next steps, again, we will be bringing you a request to approve the budget supplement and the budget amendment tomorrow. With your approval, we'll be able to move on and coordinate with OFMB to amend both the fiscal year 2025 BTE and CDOT budget allocation plans to include the reallocation of funds for our new debt service payments and increase our inflexible revenue to match our total bond proceeds from the transaction. We'll also continue to bring you budget amendment and supplement requests to allocate our remaining funding for fiscal year 2025 throughout the remainder of the fiscal year. And we are planning to return in July to amend the fiscal year 2026 budget and incorporate our future debt service payments. The reason that's not being done as part of this particular supplement is that there are other items kind of related to the legislative session that we'll need to true up and kind of look at the Bridge and Tunnel Enterprise budget and the upcoming fiscal year holistically, rather than just focusing in on the debt service component. So we'll seek to come to you and take care of that all in one amendment. And then finally, we'll begin planning for the third tranche of Bridge and Tunnel Enterprise financing for the CDOT 10-year plan. Based on our current cash flows, results of this transaction, and project cost and timing, we're currently projecting that the next issuance would need to occur late in calendar year 2026 or early in calendar year 2027. Next slide, please. That concludes our presentation. I'll turn it back over to the chair for questions.
Thank you, Patrick. Do we have any questions or comments? Looking online. Patrick, I think you're good. Congratulations. I didn't know how difficult that would be, so we got her done. All right, thank you. Next item on the agenda is Fuel Impact Enterprise Update, Paving Projects Presentation. Craig Hurst.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Board. I'm Craig Hurst. Darius is not here today, so I'll be presenting on the update for the Fuels Impact Enterprise Board. Next slide, please. So today we'll start off with just doing a quick review of the Fuels Impact Enterprise and its short history. So in 2023, the enterprise was created. Its business purpose to improve transportation of fuel and monitor vehicle emissions. Its powers are to impose an impact reduction fee, which you all did so about 2 years ago. We've been collecting since. It's to issue grants authorized by the Fuels Impact Reduction Program, and most of those grant funds go to local government. And issue bonds payable for fuels impact reduction fee revenue, and provide any services set forth in CRS 43-4-1506. All of those are pretty basic. This is a pretty easy one. Next slide, please. So a quick breakdown of how the fees that are collected are distributed or allocated. As found in 43-4-1506 in statute, the first $10 million of the fee that's collected goes to the 5 local governments that feel the impacts of the fuel distribution supply chain. And then the second allocation of the $5 million, the remaining money, has the opportunity to go to state freight and state freight projects. Next slide, I'll give you the details of that. So on the state freight projects, we can work on, state transportation projects that are on freight routes or hazmat routes, but also projects that deal with first response to emergencies and things of that nature. So the annual allocation was started to collect in October of 2023. There was a full collection of the $15 million. We are finalizing all of the intergovernmental agreements with the 5 local governments. Both Mesa County and Otero County are in the process of receiving their first payment. The other 3, El Paso County, Adams County, and the city of Aurora, all are in final review of their IGA. It's with their legal teams, and we should be getting a signature on those, and first distribution of payments should be done in May. And so those are coming to a final process there. And then the second round, or FY25 distribution, should also go to those 5 entities before the end of September this year. So they'll get their FY24 allocation, their FY25 allocation in this calendar year. Their first one should come this month, and their second payment should come in September. So back in January when we met, the Fuels Impact Enterprise Board voted to allocate the additional $1.46 million that we had to the state freight project bucket of money. So when you add the $5 million from FY24 and the $5 million from FY25, as well as that additional 1.46, we have $11,461,000 to allocate to state freight projects. And so next slide, please. So today we're going to be presenting our first project, and apologize, I kind of consolidated this slide into the others as well. But as you can see, those $5 million can go to commercial freight corridors, state government projects related to emergency response, environmental mitigation, and support projects related to the transportation of fuel within the state. So with that, next slide, please. The first project that we'd like to present is something that the Fuels Impact Enterprise Board may be aware of. This is a project to do some repair on 2 bridges on I-70 in Deer Trail. Just maybe 2 months ago, this bridge was a part of the discussion of the Transportation Commission meeting. Region 1 has been really working hard on getting the design of these structures completed. And as you can see, there's a request for funding. The total cost we're requesting Fuels Impact Enterprise funds and working closely with Bridge and Tunnel Enterprise to completely fund this project. The request to the Fuels Impact Enterprise Board is for $7 million. The last estimation that I saw is the whole project for both bridges is roughly $9.5 million. Bridge and Tunnel Enterprise would be covering the remainder of that. But I-70 is a very key hazmat corridor. Moving fuel to the Eastern Plains starts on I-70. It's loaded at a location likely in Adams County, and it works its way east on I-70. You know, as you can see in the pictures, the degradation of this infrastructure can impact the mobility of being able to haul fuel out into the Eastern Plains. And so we think the project itself aligns really well with the Fuels Impact Enterprise. And that is why we're bringing that to you today as our first project that we're requesting funding for. And again, the best part about this, I guess, is that Region 1 has done such a good job getting it through design. The anticipated add date is in July, which means we would get to start that construction. And the goal right now with the schedule would be to complete it in calendar year 25. So get the money out the door, get the projects, started and completed pretty quickly. So we also thought that was a great opportunity to bring it in front of you today because of the situation that project is in. All right, next slide, please. Another project that we're bringing to you today is a combined kind of request for $2.5 million in funds. These would be split up between regions 2 and 3 to do paving projects with a focus on the worst conditions first. Again, because this is Fuels Impact Enterprise funds, we would be focused on freight routes, which if I were to show you a map of freight routes, you would say, oh, those are all the major roads in Colorado, all your interstates, your major highways. And so we think that it's, beneficial not just to the freight industry. Obviously, it's a large benefit to the freight industry if we can continue to pave on major roadways, but it's also a benefit to everybody using the road. So we think this is a great opportunity to team up with the regions to try to do some pavement condition improvements. The current estimate is it would get us about 15 to 20 miles of paving, which we think is great. And then we would look to continue to do this, in future rounds of funding requests with other regions to really focus on some of the worst first conditions and help, of course, add to the current budget that's already out there in the regions that they're doing work with. And so this would be in addition to the pavement work that the regions have already planned. This is just adding to that. The stakeholders that the freight team work with through the Freight Advisory Council and the other efforts that my team makes, pavement is a big priority for the freight industry. And so we are hoping that, bringing this project set to you guys to request funding will ultimately kind of meet multiple expectations. Our stakeholders, obviously here at CDOT, we're focused on improving pavement quality as well. And so I think this checks several of those boxes, and we thought it was a good project idea to bring forward for request for funding. All right, and the final topic of the day, if you can go to the next slide, please, is the staff recommends that the board adopts the Policy Directive 703 as the Fuels Impact Enterprise Fiscal Rules. So PD 703 is the fiscal rules that are utilized for the other enterprises as well. And of course, those are the fiscal rules that all of us at CDOT follow on a day-to-day basis. So for consistency's sake, we are recommending that PD 703 is also adopted by the Fuels Impact Enterprise Board, which gives us good guidance on project types and things that we can bring to you for recommendation for funding. And I think we can be pretty quick today. Any questions?
Just, thank you very much, Craig. That was really good. So I appreciate that. For my education, what is hydro demolition?
I'm sorry, what's that?
There's a Term on Deer Trail called hydro demolition. If I read it right. It says the scope of the repair work includes something called hydro demolition. And I just not heard the term before, so.
Well, I think I would butcher it, so I'd love if someone could jump in. I know just a very high level of what that means.
Well,
Commissioner, yeah,
I'm definitely for it. It sounds cool.
Yeah, it's basically a high pressure water removal process where the machine goes over top of the concrete and basically hydro water demos the concrete. So it's a very high pressure wash. Gotcha.
I'm glad you asked that because I was kind of curious myself. So, Commissioner Ritter.
Do you have an idea? You indicated that there would be additional funding for pavement in districts 2 and 3. Do you have a specific allocation of where those that paving would be, or would that be up to District 3 to determine where their monies would be spent?
Well, when I first started to do the outreach with the regions, I'll tell you, I knew right where to go because they all have great plans in place for pavement preservation or pavement maintenance. So I started there with a materials engineer, asking what projects are they working on this year, where their funding is at. And as you all probably know pretty well, they have a pavement budget, but some of that can be dependent on how bad the winter is. And so always happy to work on trying to push some freight funds towards those efforts as well, so we can make sure that they can get out there and do the work that's critical in each region. And so hopefully in the future, we can come back and request funds for the other 3 regions as well to make sure that we're kind of doing that across the state.
I want you to keep sending them to 2 and 3 myself.
I understand.
All right, any other questions or comments? I think we're good, Craig. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. Commissioner Cook?
I didn't have a question. I just thought this was a good use of the funds. I'm glad they're there. I like the tie-in to the fuels and freight industries and so forth. So just glad to see these seem like perfect projects.
Yeah, thank you. And I think it's also very exciting to talk with some of the counties and hearing what they're anticipating to do with their funds. And so I think hopefully we kind of can get some good momentum and get off on the right foot and just be a good program.
Okay, other questions, comments? I think we're good now, Craig. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
You bet. Next item on the agenda is the Mobility Committee Mountain Rail Update with Paul DeRocher and Mo Sullivan.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, Mo is going to be providing this presentation to you today, so I'll pass it to her.
Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Mo Sullivan, the Assistant Director of Passenger Rail, and excited to give you an update here on the Mountain Rail corridor. So more specifically, I'll give you an update on the service development plan progress, some exciting news about our station resolutions, some even more exciting news about the Moffett Tunnel lease agreement, and then outline some next steps. So just as a review, you know, the mission and the objectives of this project is really to enhance passenger rail connectivity between Denver and Craig. So improving mobility and multimodal travel options, connecting diverse communities, fostering economic vitality, supporting environmental goals. And this is really looking to leverage existing resources and assets to meet the growing demand for passenger rail service. And so a review of kind of where we've been, where we are now, and where we're looking to go. So this all kicked off in October of 2023 when we got some funding to start the service development plan efforts. And then last legislative session was great in that we have both the congestion impact fee that was passed as well as the oil and gas fee. And that provides dedicated funding sources for multimodal programs such as Mountain Rail. That's okay. And then this past winter, we conducted 3 different rounds of public open houses along the Mountain Rail corridor. So in September, October, and December. And we really tried to cover the full corridor, so made sure that there was an open house in the Yampa Valley area, one in the Fraser Valley area, and then in the Denver metro area. So in total, there were 9 different open houses to kind of go through what we're imagining for this project and hear from the locals, kind of their feedback on the ideas and help you know, use that input as we continue the service development plan efforts. Additionally, as you may all be aware, we were able to leverage some of those funds, so specifically from the congestion impact fee to help expand Winter Park Express service. And so we actually were able to expand it in terms of the season. It started earlier in December instead of January and went later, so till the end of March. In terms of capacity, so they, starting in January, Amtrak actually added more cars to the service, so more people could ride each train. It was also expanded in terms of service days, so it used to be just a Friday, Saturday, Sunday service, and it was expanded to operate on Thursdays and Mondays as well. And it also expanded in terms of geography. So the service went to Fraser instead of just going to Winter Park. And that was hugely successful. We saw over 40,000 passengers ride the service throughout the season. And to compare it to the previous season, there were only like, I think 17,000. And so that's almost triple the amount of ridership as previous seasons. So, and most notably, the fares were also cheaper. So I think it shows that with expanded frequency and service options and cheaper fares, people will ride. And so this spring, we've been working very diligently and have successfully come to an agreement with Union Pacific Railroad to 1, renew the Moffett Tunnel lease, and 2, to allow for passenger rail on Union Pacific Railway right-of-way there. And then this summer, we plan to wrap up the service development plan. This will also include 1 other open house to kind of update folks on what's the progress that's been made since the previous open houses, and then make sure we're outlining kind of the next steps. And then we're also looking to advance project implementation so that we can get trains on the tracks by the end of next year. So just a review of, what is the service development plan? Why are we doing this? What exactly is the service development plan? So it really determines kind of the operation and financial feasibility of this project. And it defines all the essential elements for this service. So those are all kind of outlined on the right hand, but the route, the service, the stations, infrastructure needs, estimated costs associated with that, fleet requirements, et cetera. And it also includes kind of service options and an alternative analysis. So what are all the different service patterns that are possibilities, and narrowing that down to make sure that we identify kind of the alternative that makes the most sense for the goals of this project. And then, the service development plan process is an FRA process that we're following. But I think it's worth, re-emphasizing that this project is fully funded locally with state dollars. And so while we're following an FRA process, we don't have to go through kind of that review cycle. And it prepares us should we ever seek to get any federal funding for this project, but is also setting us well in terms of what the industry standard is, but we have been able to move very quickly and to complete the service development plan and much quicker because it's not federally mandated at this point. And so I talked about kind of the alternatives analysis and different service options. So here are some that we've envisioned. And right now, service option A is kind of something that's been identified, at least preliminarily, to meet the goals of this project, though through this SDP work and continuing negotiate work with UP, these may change as we work towards eventual implementation. But I think the service option A really outlines the different markets of this service. So one market is that Denver to Granby service, so very similar to the current Winter Park Express service. And this is the service, this is kind of phase one that is kind of has been agreed upon with UP as phase one. So one round trip from Denver to Granby. So that is set. But it's kind of the additional phasing from there that's still being determined. And then that's a second market that's been identified as that Yampa Valley service. So providing people options to get to both Steamboat Springs Resort, to and from Steamboat Springs Resort and the downtown. And so more of a Yampa Valley local service option. And then that long pattern all the way from Denver to Craig is that kind of third market that we think that this corridor could serve. And so that's kind of the different service options we're looking at in terms of trips, but is subject to change beyond phase one. Next slide. So here's that kind of same, service options, but displayed geographically. And so again, phase one will be one round trip from Denver to Granby at the end of next year. And then the additional phases are TBD, but notably there is existing passenger rail service from Denver to out past Kremling and then to about Bond, Colorado, which is kind of that dip there in the map if you're not familiar. And then as the kind of route indicates heading northwest and to the Yampa Valley, there's not existing passenger rail service there yet. And so I think if you all were listening to Lisa Kaufman earlier, very eloquently explain kind of PTC and those requirements, and there's not PTC on the northwest portion of this corridor. And so those are some infrastructure improvements that would need to be made before passenger rail service could start there. But there is PTC and compliant track from Denver all the way to Bond now. And so that's why phase one from Denver to Granby is the goal for 2026 and should be able to be implemented pretty easily since there's existing passenger rail service and infrastructure to support that. Next slide. So update on station resolutions. we're very excited to announce that almost all of the identified kind of station locations and the counties that they're within have kind of passed station resolutions that indicate their support of Mountain Rail, that also indicate their support of the station locations that have been identified in the service development plan, with a few exceptions, which I'll go through. And also a commitment to do a station area plan around those station locations. So making sure that, one, they can very logistically and operationally have a rail station that supports rail service, but also that either the town or the county or both are involved in helping develop a station area that, one, supports the state's goals in maximizing ridership and the goals of the service, but also meets the needs of their community. And so we're really excited to display all the work that's been done on that front. The two exceptions are the West Metro station. We are going to embark on a station location study that'll kick off this summer. And similarly, City of Steamboat Springs, in conjunction with the resort, have decided to do their own station location study that will support.
I don't see Kremling on there. I know that we have a stop planned in Kremling.
Yes.
We just start dropping them off?
No. So like I said, there are a couple of exceptions. So the two I identified were ones where the location hasn't been solidified. There are two other exceptions. We actually have someone who's in Oak Creek today working with their staff as they're developing their long-range plan currently. And so making sure that we're incorporating this as part of their efforts. And then Kremling just got a new town manager. And so they're also meeting with them today. And so we were waiting until they had a new town manager on board before we pursued this with them. And as part of kind of identifying, getting these station area plans and these resolutions passed, we weren't saying, go do these station area plans without any resources. And so we made sure we had a webinar and made sure they knew of the available state and federal dollars available to support those planning efforts. And we will be closely involved as those station area plans get kicked off. And then I think the media probably has already stolen our thunder on this one, but very exciting news on the Moffett Tunnel update. So as you may recall, in November, the state and Union Pacific signed an MOU to renew the lease and kind of work out the details of that agreement. And so on May 1st of this year, we reached that agreement with Union Pacific and signed, a renewal of the Moffett Tunnel lease and also a use agreement with them. And notably, this allows for up to 3 round trips through the Moffett Tunnel. And this is in addition to the Winter Park Express service and California Zephyr service. So I can't emphasize enough what a huge undertaking that was and kind of a monumental achievement. I think you all saw Lisa Kaufman earlier today, but she, even our consultants, many people told us that it wasn't possible in 4 months, and it was done in 4 months, which is normally a several-year process. And so I think it speaks obviously to the tremendous effort of the rail team and the project team, but also I think it indicates kind of the relationship we hope to have with Union Pacific as we continue to collaborate to bring this service to fruition. And so next steps, like I said, we will finalize the service development plan this summer, and there will be an additional open house, likely mid-June. I also reiterating, we're going to kick off those station location studies for West Metro and Steamboat. And then we're going to start with implementation. So we need to identify operator, rolling stock, all the fun stuff, all the details. The work, in some ways, the work has just begun. And so working towards that end of 2026 deadline to get a service to Granby phase 1. Happy to take questions.
All right. Questions, comments?
Well, today is my day for getting these little educational notes. What's the issue with passengers coming through Moffett Tunnel? I had heard something about concerns regarding Moffett Tunnel because of its length and the ventilation through there. So can you explain to me what that is and what the remediation would be necessary to make that suitable for passenger?
Yeah, definitely. Great question. So as you know, the Moffett Tunnel was built a very long time ago, and so was not really built to modern engineering standards, and so therefore doesn't have ventilation. And so a requirement of a service that goes through there is that I believe it's 20 minutes. There needs to be at least 20 minutes between trains to allow the tunnel to ventilate on its own, let's say. And that's especially important for passenger service, as we don't want those fumes to impact our
So that's
passengers.
all that we need to do is just have enough separation. It's not that someone needs to do some construction or add some filtration or something else. It is just really spacing.
Yes, yes. And so there would need to be construction or some other solution if we wanted to squeeze trains closer together than that designated period of time at this point, so.
Okay, other questions or comments? Commissioner Cook?
Thank you, Mo. So with the station studies, and yet we're planning to start operation in 2026, will we be able to complete the station study and take care of that in time?
Yeah, great question. So notably on phase one of the service will be from Denver to Granby. And for much of that corridor, there are existing stations that we plan to serve with the initial like day one service. There'll be two infill stations. We're calling kind of that infill part of phase 1B, because we recognize that though the station location studies should be complete in advance of day one service, any construction associated with that likely will not be. And so those infill stations in kind of the West Metro and then Rawlinsville will be like future. And then similarly, all the stations in the Yampa Valley are still to be built, to be determined. And they but so is the service and the infrastructure that's track and train infrastructure that's needed to provide that service. So we have a little bit more lead time on those.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Gutierrez?
Well, as someone who grew up with passenger rail from Craig to Denver and on beyond, I am excited to see this project finally coming to fruition. My dad worked for the Denver and Rio Grande Railroad, and I have to say that it has a long history. That line has some interesting history. And if you ever drive into Craig on Highway 40 on the right-hand side, just as you go in, there is the Marcia car, which was David Moffat's private rail car, and it's still there. And it was presented to Craig in 1953, and my dad helped build that temporary line to get it from the main line over there to the park where it resides. I guess the real comment, besides being excited about getting that passenger rail again, is that it's kind of disappointing to me that we didn't do this about 10 years ago, when we could have saved some of those historic depots that were there, because they were gorgeous depots. And unfortunately, we're a little late, but that's doesn't make any difference. We need this line, and I'm so glad you guys have done all this work to get there.
Thank you.
Okay, other questions, comments? Commissioner Ritter?
Did I get this question wrong? I call the gap in rail line service from, call it Granby / Kremling to Oak Creek. Timeline on that, because I get questions. I've been saying 8 to 10 years. Is that a reasonable amount to be quoted on?
Great question. it's still to be determined. So part of it, we had to reach an agreement with Union Pacific to have a better understanding of what the cost associated with those infrastructure upgrades is going to be. And so as that just got finalized, we're still working through some of those details. And then once those costs are identified, it's really identifying, you know, how they're going to be funded. And so that's part of why the phasing is beyond phase one is still a little bit to be determined, but we're, you know, diligently working on figuring that out.
Should we expect to see that in the service development plan or down the road later?
Yes, so the service development plan, the completed one, will include kind of cost estimates and some proposed phasing.
Thank you. And just to let everybody know, I've seen recent polling, at least in terms of Northwest Colorado on this passenger rail. And rarely have I seen such broad support for something that you know, most people don't necessarily see that they'd be using, but they see that there would be great benefit to the community.
Yeah, great point. And yes, we've been very excited about the reception of this project throughout the corridor.
All right, other comments, questions? I think that's it. Thanks, Mo. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
All right. Now I have that as the last item on our agenda. Herman, are we done?
Yes, we are. And I don't see Jessica anymore, but Heather, do you want to chime in for the activities this afternoon? I don't know if she was able to change the time or not.
Okay.
I think she's working on changing the time. Probably shoot for maybe like 3:30 over at Brooklands to celebrate Karen. It's deserved. It's very deserved. We really appreciate all of your commitment to CDOT and CTIO. You've been such a leader and a champion for all of us. So we're very excited to celebrate her. So we'll do a slow exit out of here and just make our way over to Brooklands. I do recommend staying parked here and just walk over because there's really no parking over there.
And Karen's picking up the tab at the bar. Is that what's going on?
Yes. No.
Piece of cake. All right, thank you for that announcement. And yes, all of us, please go over there if you can. And we'll go ahead and adjourn and then get back together tomorrow morning, bright and early. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
8 a.m.
Sorry, I won't be able to join you. Good luck. Have fun with Karen. Thanks.
Same here.